So in this video, what we're going to cover is how to sync Apptivo and Google Apps for work. Because Apptivo's got this entire suite of business management tools, but at the core of it are these collaboration tools like your calendar and your task management, your email, things that are offered and done very well by Google Apps. So in this case, what Apptivo has is a suite of integrations that's set up directly with Google Apps that allow us to share data and make the systems work together. So as far as an agenda for today, we're going to keep it pretty short and sweet. We're going to start off just quickly talk about what Apptivo is at a very, very high level. And then we'll dive in specifically on what are the Google Apps integrations between Apptivo and Google Apps for Work. And then we'll go through and actually go through the process of setting up a new account, installing the app from the Google Apps Marketplace, and then heading on over and getting Apptivo set up to do the sync. So we'll just quickly run through each step and talk briefly about what it would look like. So first, let's talk about what is Apptivo. So Apptivo is this suite of many different business applications. And at the core of usage for Google Apps, you're looking at the CRM. So what people have is they'll use Apptivo for actions like tracking their sales pipeline or doing some things inside of the contact management that Google doesn't really support that well. It's meant to be a simple contact manager for your email and allow you to get the full power of Apptivo CRM, track your sales pipeline. But then the information from Google, it really connects everywhere. So Apptivo has invoicing, project management, help desk ticketing, many different apps. But at the core of all of Apptivo's apps is this suite of collaboration features. And this is really where you see most of the integration with Google Apps, where we have a calendar, and obviously Google has a renowned calendar. So what we have is a direct sync between the two systems, where Google's got a great calendar interface, and it's got all these different integrations and accessibility across your devices. What Apptivo has is the association with your business data, where let's say if you have this calendar event to call up a contact, go meet them for lunch tomorrow, Apptivo is going to be able to show you that you have a potential deal with them, see the last time you emailed them, what you'd spoken about. It'll have the address of the person's organization. It's got all this information that normally wouldn't exist inside of Google's contacts or calendar system. So what we do is we build right on top of that, and we go and we add all this other powerful information that Apptivo has stored in our other applications. So we've got kind of in a calendar, some different task management features. So we sync up with those Google equivalents. Then we also have email, place to store files. And a lot of these directly overlap with Google, which kind of comes to the next step of you'll use one or many apps inside of Apptivo. They build on top of what you're doing in Apptivo, but specifically what data is synced. So that's what comes down to the specific features that we connect with. And these can actually be controlled one by one. So the idea is that there's overlapping functionality between the two systems. And when you choose to, you could actually use both of them in tandem with each other. So in this case, we'll go feature by feature, and you'll be allowed to say, do I want to use that integration or not? So that way, when I have like the contact database sitting inside of Gmail, all the contacts that I'm emailing, those are relevant inside of CRM and billing and everything like that. Even if I'm just using Apptivo for invoicing, being able to share your contacts between employees within your Google organization and share contacts with your invoicing platform, it's really a powerful feature just within itself. So what these are is the kind of standard out-of-the-box features on the collaboration side. But the one really big feature which a lot of you might be looking for is the contact sharing feature. Because although we're syncing all this data with Apptivo, we're also syncing data between your Google accounts. And Google already supports sharing calendar events and email across accounts. What Google doesn't support is being able to share contacts across accounts, where you have one business contact inside of your Gmail account, and you want it to be shared, where if you change that phone number, it instantly updates across the rest of your organization. So everybody else has that contact, or maybe even just select people you want to have that contact. So being able to share contacts across an organization while using Google Apps is one feature that people use Apptivo for just on its own. So that's one special integration. And then otherwise, you can just see the different paired up features that we have. So we can quickly run through and just talk about what each one of these is. So when we're looking at a record in Apptivo, you have all these different pieces of information. So what we have is like a contact profile in Apptivo would have related calendar events and documents and tasks and everything like that. So in Google, they're all completely separate. Apptivo just strives to bring them all together. So you're going to see when we go navigate inside of the application how I bring up a contact, and then there's these different features associated with it. So the idea is that you can take a file that's stored in Google Drive and link it on an existing contact. Same thing, a calendar event can be a Google Calendar event, but it can be linked inside of Apptivo. And you can send emails, but your conversations are captured in the context of a contact. So let's go ahead, let's go log into a demo account right now, and let's go take a look at what these features look like inside of Apptivo. So here I'm just on the Apptivo website. We'll go log in, and we're going to log in as Kenny Clark here. So there's lots of configurations and such inside of this company, but really we're just going to go look at a contact profile. We're not going to dive too far into all the different options and such you can control, because there's quite a bit of control that you can have over how the system works in here. We're just going to go bring up our contact, Maxine. And now we're in this detailed view. So if we just think about this in relation to how you'd have a contact in Google, you've already got, their basic information. Name, the company they work for, their phone number and such. But one thing right off the bat is you see I've got a lot of information stored here. You can fully customize the data that you store in Apptivo. So that's one of the things that builds on top of your Google contact, where the basic info is kept in sync. The information you need to properly communicate with them through Gmail. But then all the other more complex business data and their historical information is stored away inside of your CRM in Apptivo. So things like the company, now they're no longer just a piece of text. There's actually a hyperlink where I have a profile, and I can bring up all the contacts I have in an organization by looking at the company. Otherwise, you have the tabs across the top of the page. So here, for example, I have a Documents tab. So the idea is that you might have a contract stored in Google Drive. It's related to one of these contacts, like who is that contact with? So in Apptivo, we have our own document storage, but here we have an integration. So I can actually open up a window. It will allow me to connect. So yes, I would like to select from Google. Now it just shows me every Google document I have, and I can form a hyperlink. I can even upload a new document from Google into Apptivo directly from here. So that's the documents integration. And then if we look through the rest of the integrations, so we've got documents, calendar, email, tasks, and then leads we're not really going to talk about today. These are just the other tabs on that contact. So up here we have a calendar tab for the contact. Notice it probably looks pretty familiar. If I click on something and I schedule an event into the calendar, looks pretty similar to Google Apps. The one key difference between this and Google Calendar is right here, where Apptivo has this association with your business data. So there actually is one main calendar event or calendar in Apptivo where I can click on an event, and then it would navigate me back right here into the contact where it originated from. So you've got events, and then we also sync with Google Tasks. So this is for those of you who use it. You can control it individually. So you can choose not to use Google Tasks, but then still use the Google Calendar sync. And with email, we actually have a generic IMAP email connector and forwarding option. So it's not a direct Google Apps integration. It's actually handled a little bit separately. So I'll talk about this really briefly at the end, but this is actually something that's kind of generic, and you can actually have Google Apps emails connected with emails from other services as well. And then otherwise, we're actually in the Contacts app. So, being able to browse through lists of contacts, this entire set of information is what is kept in sync within Google. And that's really what we want to look at as far as the next step goes, which is how do you go about and get this information in sync? So if you want to learn more information about what these individual features are, I'll point you towards some resources at the end of this video on the website. But for now, let's talk about if you're satisfied that you want to move forward and you want to get this Google Apps integration set up, how do you go about configuring it for your business? So really, before we start, I just want to call out one very specific item, which is if you're considering the contact sharing feature that we've discussed, you need to think about how you're going to import your contacts. Because upon setting up Apptivo, we're creating a system to merge all of your contacts together and have a unified database. But let's say if you currently have 10 employees and they all have 5 years worth of their own contacts, and some of them are duplicates and some of them are probably duplicates with different pieces of information, where maybe one person has outdated information. The only way to really get this together is you want to take this opportunity to go through and merge all those contacts together and get one clean set before initiating this process. That way, when you start up the sync, Apptivo syncs one clean set of your information, and you're working off a unified database from that point forward. If you're coming over from one set, you're a single user, or if you're starting a brand new account, no problem, very easy, but just kind of keep that in mind. Once you're ready, there's really 4 key steps in getting this all configured, which is we have to install the Apptivo app from our Google Apps admin console. So we'll go to the marketplace apps and find it. Then there's a link inside of that install process called additional setup, which some of you, if you've already configured it in the past, it didn't work, you might just have to click on this link. Then this will take us into Apptivo. So if you don't have an account yet, it'll actually prompt you to generate one. Or if you do, and which in this case, I'm going to show you that flow where I can connect to an existing account. It's simply going to rely on you having the same email, and it'll connect it for us. And then it'll log us into our Apptivo account, and we have to perform a couple configuration settings inside of Apptivo to choose which features that we want to enable. So that's where we can choose, I want to turn on the calendar sync, but not the task sync. So with that, let's go ahead. Let's run through these 4 steps and get set up. So we're going to go back into our web browser. And I'm just going to head over to apptivo.com. And for right now, what we'll do is we will log out of our Apptivo account. So basically starting from, yes, I have an Apptivo account, but we're going to go install Google Apps. So I'm just going to go through a shortcut. You can just go straight to Google Apps and install from the marketplace. One shortcut is to go to our Google Apps page under the Solutions menu. And there's actually just a hyperlink to install the app directly from here. But either way, go to the marketplace and search it. Find us from here. It'll get us to the same spot. We need to locate the Apptivo app, and we need to install it, which, by the way, there are multiple versions of the Apptivo app. For if you want general integrations, install the generic one called Apptivo. So everything we're talking about today, we're just going to use the main app. The main app is inclusive of everything else. When you're ready, you'll need to make sure that you're logged into the proper account. So I am logged in as the administrator of my Google Apps domain, which may or may not be the administrator in your Apptivo account. But if I'm connecting to an existing Apptivo account, I have to be an admin in both Google Apps and Apptivo, even if you change that permission after the initial setup. So in this case, I'm an admin on both, and I can simply proceed to install this app. So it'll ask for permission. It's going to take us through a few steps here. We're going to come through. We're going to basically authorizing Apptivo to get API access to all of your different data that we've spoken about. So now it'll come through these steps. We can say, yes, we'll notify users, no problem. It'll tell us about a new navigation item being added, which I'll show you. Then it talks about going into the Android app, because there are Android and iOS apps for Apptivo as well. So you can install those. You can control them in your Google Apps domain. And then this is the additional setup that I was speaking about. So make sure that you click on this link right here. Otherwise, we won't be able to successfully complete the setup. So by clicking this link, it's going to open up a window. And this is actually on our way into Apptivo. So it's doing the same thing where it's using your Google account and trying to log into Apptivo. So this is where you have to make sure that this is already an Apptivo user. Otherwise, it would create a brand new account if we don't find that email. So otherwise, if everything looks good, I'm going to allow access. And this will just take a moment and it will log us right into our existing Apptivo account. And because we're coming through the setup process, it's going to try to import employees and everything, which is great if you're a new organization. But in your case, I haven't even enabled API access for this. It's something else I'd have to go turn on in Google. But otherwise, you don't need that feature. Your employees might already exist, or you can always manually create them yourself. So part of the setup process would be going in and creating those employees if you need them. And if you ever need to go back to that, underneath the Human Resources category in Apptivo, you'll find the Employees app. So this is where I can come in, I can add users. This is the simplified version, which is specific for Google Apps. You'll see there's a link up here to flip between the full and the simplified version if you need to go back to the full HR app. And then otherwise, I'll just see each user and what kind of statuses that they have enabled. I could go import and add employees directly from here. Of course, I need that API access. But we get our employees in order. Now we're already inside of Apptivo. So it's really just a matter of going through and turning on the various syncs. So let's just kind of talk through them one by one and say what integration steps are required. So with Google Drive, the great part about this is there's absolutely no setup required. It authenticated everything when I was going through the process. So as soon as you bring up a record and I attempt to add a document, there's nothing required to get the Google Drive link there. And as far as once they add it, the only thing that's required is they have an existing Google account. So as long as they're on your Google Apps domain, it'll open up the pop-up and everything will happen automatically. You don't have to do anything as an admin. Next is the calendar sync, which does require setup, but the setup's really easy. So long as you've installed the app like we did a moment ago, now you just have to choose whether we want to enable it. So you click on your name in the upper right corner of Apptivo, and then go to Business Settings. Now inside of Business Settings, in the left column, we're going to see the option for Sync Services. And here, we just have the 2 different options. So, it's actually 2 up front, but we're going to talk about calendar and tasks at the same time, which is right here, a simple toggle switch. No other configuration required, other than making sure that each user set up their time zone. Because if you have people working across many time zones, you need to make sure that each user goes to their preferences and sets the proper local time zone in Apptivo. Otherwise, the Google Calendar sync wouldn't work right for you. But if you have a simple setup, very easy. We just come in here and we would need to toggle off this switch. So that would just immediately turn it on, and then calendar events would begin syncing from Apptivo to Google, and it's the same exact thing for toggling on the tasks. Now, if you see that you're not able to toggle these on, what it indicates is that there was an error in this installation step. So we want to run back through and do that additional setup, or just contact the support. Okay, so that's going to cover your calendar and your tasks. Then the email. So email is a little bit different, where the email is actually something generic, but it's an IMAP and forwarding connector. So what you're going to need to do is each user will actually connect their own email. It's not something you do at the administrative level. So this is a standard set of procedures. I recommend that you just, you kind of have a standard onboard steps. Whenever you add a new user, you give them a little tour and you tell them, please set up these 3 things on your account. One of them is going to be clicking on preferences. So the preferences area controls everything for the user. And then we can click on email right here on the left. So you'll see I've already added an email, but we'll go ahead and let's just quickly replay these steps. So the idea is you'd hit the add button and it would take you to a page like this. So you can have 2 options, forwarding and IMAP. And I recommend that you do both. So when you first come in, it'll look like this, an empty form, type in your email, toggle on IMAP. And at that point, you'll see you have your settings here. So it's actually going to default to the settings for Google Apps. Simply type in your Google Apps email and the password to your account, and then we can hit authenticate. So some of you might receive an error at this point. We're not going to dive into all the troubleshooting steps, but there's a couple settings that you might have to change in your Google account. So if you do run into that, you can always just head over to the Apptivo website or contact our support. They'll be able to run you through those couple configuration steps on your Google account. And then otherwise, if it authenticates, we've set up IMAP, but we still need to set up forwarding. So that's this Apptivo email address to forward. So what I can do is I can copy that from either page. So I'm going to take this and then I'm going to copy it onto my clipboard. And once it's on my clipboard, I need to go into my Gmail account. So I'll just head over to Gmail. And what I need to do is go into my settings area. So in the upper right corner, I click on the little gear icon up here, and then I go to settings. And it's up on the top, forwarding and pop/IMAP. I click on that, and then you'll see the option on top. So it'll be default set to disable forwarding, but first you need to add a new forwarding address. So we will do that. And we just simply paste in our email right here. And we go to next. So, okay, no problem. We want it to forward. So it's going to send that confirmation email to us. And then until then, I can't do it. So it's going to ask for the confirmation code. So what that means is simply hop into Apptivo. And then on your main homepage, you should see an email sitting for you right here. So in the left column, you have your emails tab. And right there, we can see our request for forwarding. So we just have to grab the code out of here and we'll be good to go. So there is our code. I'm going to copy that and simply paste it into Google. And then the last step is don't forget to actually select to forward the email to this. And then just make sure you keep mails copy in the inbox. So as long as you've got that set up, we hit save changes. And our email is now set up. So now both sent and received email from this point forward are going to sync completely. And it's actually really cool where once you set it up, let's say you set up your contact sync, we get it all working. The idea is that your contacts will come sync in, and then every email that you send back and forth with each contact will also sync. So this happens completely automatically where you continue communicating from within Gmail, but then inside of Apptivo, we're capturing your conversation history. So that way, right alongside of all of your activities and your past notes and everything like that, you'll be able to see every email sent and received. And that just happens behind the scenes. Okay, so each user will go and set up their email. And then we said we're not going to cover forms. That's a different piece. But the last piece I want to talk about is the Google Apps contact share, because that's incredibly popular. So what we'll do is we'll hop back into the application. Now, this one's a little bit different because it's a more app level sharing. So we actually need to go into the Contacts app, which we're in right now, and we need to go to the settings of the Contacts app. So the settings is found by clicking these little 3 dots in the upper right corner, just to the left of the search field. Then we can click on settings. Now inside of here, there's a lot of settings, but don't worry, there's just one we need to go to, which is right here, Contacts. So we expand this menu and we see Google Apps integration. So everything's going to be turned off by default. But now that we've granted access and everything, we can turn it on. And now you have a couple settings here, but the recommended flow is to do 1, 2, 3 on. And then the fourth one is a special setting. So you leave all this stuff, then hit update. So now our contact sharing is set up and it will begin syncing contacts. So what should happen in a little bit is when you go to everybody's Google Contacts, it usually takes a couple minutes. When you start refreshing, you're going to see 2 new groups will appear in everybody's contacts. It'll just be 2 empty groups, unless you have contacts in Apptivo, in which case it'll start syncing them immediately. But there'll be one for Apptivo contacts, then one for Apptivo employees. So the Apptivo employees is going to be a read-only list of everybody in the employees app of Apptivo. And then the contacts list will be kept in sync with the contacts app inside of Apptivo. So right here, you can see it's created the groups, but they're probably still empty. So you can see each one. It says Apptivo Global Technology, so your company name, and it'll say new contacts, new employees, contacts. So the idea is it'll start to create these groups. And then whenever you want to have something in sync, so you'll see mine's already started to fill it up. If you create a contact from Gmail, you can actually simply add it to this group, and then it would automatically get picked up and then be synced out to Apptivo, and then it would be synced to everybody else's Google accounts. Or if you add any contact from Apptivo, then it would sync instantly to everybody else's Google accounts. So as far as the import process, we mentioned you want to know how to import ahead of time. So if you're a brand new account, you have nothing in Apptivo, and you turn on the sync, you've done nothing yet. You're still okay. But if you already have contacts in Apptivo, as you see, it's going to instantly start creating all those contacts inside of my Google account. So in that case, I want to make sure that I've got my contacts cleaned up ahead of time. Or if I'm ready to go and import everything, the fast and dirty approach is just to select all of your contacts from my contacts and go, add them into that group. And that would tell Apptivo to come and sync those contacts from here on out. The other method, which is more popular, if you're really trying to set up Apptivo, is you can export spreadsheets from everybody's Google accounts and merge them all together, and then import to Apptivo and let Apptivo sync back out to everybody's Google accounts. So a couple different ways you can approach that. But then there are a few more settings. So like my admin's going to flip on immediately. But then you might have seen a moment ago when we were editing the employees inside of Apptivo. So back in the employees app, there was the option to individually turn on or off the contact sync for each user. So you can see Gina Clark, who we're logged in as, they have contact sync enabled. So do a few other people from a previous install. But by default, everybody's going to have it turned off. And then I would choose whether I want to begin syncing contacts with that account. And then I can also set up what level of access, like whether they get read-only access or read-write access, because that's just the basics. What you can also do is there's categories inside of Apptivo, and you can assign contacts to individuals or teams. So out of the box, it's just a simple list of contacts. Everybody has access, but you could choose who can access each contact. You can even set up groups of contacts that are only accessible to certain teams. So you can have like divisions in your organization, and then each division has their own contact list. And then there's one general contact list, which everybody has access to. So that type of setup is indeed possible. That's just a little bit more advanced, which we're not going to dive into the details of on this session. So really, after running through each one of those items, you've set up the full suite of Google Apps. Now, there's a whole lot more configuration options you might want to look at, things to check out inside of Apptivo. So as far as getting more information, certainly you can head on over to the YouTube channel, and we've got some further videos there. But then specifically on Google Apps, you saw that inside of the system, we have built-in support chat, so they can always help you getting set up here. If you run into any sort of trouble, you can't perform one of the steps in this video, or head on over back to the website, and yeah, you got some more information on each feature right here. But then under the help section, you're also going to see this section called answers. And this has like thousands of help articles, pretty much any sort of problem you can run into. Somebody's probably ran into it in the past, and you'll be able to find an answer right there. But with that, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll catch you next time.